Cashflow Positive Book Publishing, How You Get Paid to Promote Your Business and Attract High-Paying, High-Calibre Clients, the webinar version. Now, if you're listening to this recording, you're one of two kinds of people. Either you're someone who already runs their own business and you're looking to publish a book to profile you as the expert in your field, or you're someone that for whatever reason wants to write or publish a book and doesn't realise yet that your book is actually a business. That's right, correctly marketed, your book can not only bring you in a nice income, but due to the credibility that comes from being a published author, you can actually have all sorts of entrepreneurial opportunities open up to you that you may not otherwise thought were possible or that were not otherwise possible. So here on in, every time you hear me refer to a book or a business throughout this presentation, just know that they're the same thing. If you have an existing business, I'm talking about the book to profile you as the expert in your field. And if you don't yet have a business, I'm talking about the business that's going to come from the fact that you're a published author and centre around the topic of your book, even though you don't fully know where you're going with this journey yet. So let's get stuck into it. Well, usually I'd start, if this was a live event, by asking a couple of questions to the people in the room. I'd be asking things like, what's your name? What's your field of expertise? What's your book subject? Where's your book currently at? And why are you here today? Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to hear the answers to these questions, but I do want you to pause the recording shortly and answer these questions. Just write them down on a bit of paper so that you've got these goals at the start of the session to look back to at the end. It's important to know what your name is, and what I mean by your name is not your literal name. My name, for this example, happens to be Kylee, but you won't find that anywhere on the front of my book. My books say the Publishing Queen, because that's who I want the credibility for. So when I say your name, that's what I'm talking about. For your field of expertise, that will be generally what you currently do for a living. Your book subject will of course be what the book's actually about, and if these two don't tie in perfectly, you need to have a think about it. Either you want to change your field of expertise, meaning if you're writing about a particular area and that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, maybe you better get a little bit more experience around that area and create the name for yourself as the expert in the field in that area. Or if you have a field of expertise and you're already brilliant at what you do and you'd like to drive more traffic to your business from the point of view of getting more sales and getting more leads so people are now paying to become a customer of yours instead of you paying to go out and find them, then maybe your first book shouldn't be maybe that dream book you've always wanted to write, let's say that children's book series, but a book that will bring you credibility as the expert in your field. We use this book to fund the production costs not only of the book itself, but of what I refer to as the dream books, which is your children's book series and things like that down the line. It's always important that when you think about publishing a book, you publish the book first, because I find everyone that wants to publish a book has more than one book in them. You publish the book first that's going to bring you in the most income the quickest, and use the returns from that to fund the rest of the process. And yes, we'll be talking a lot more about that throughout today's presentation. It's also important to jot down that bit of paper in front of you where your book's currently at. As in right now, today, before you get the information I'm about to share with you, where are you at right now? Because if you don't know where you're at right now, you're hardly going to be able to get to wherever it is you want to go, which of course is going to be different for everyone. Thus the last question, why are you here today? So jot down what you want to get out of this session. This is the first time this session's ever been delivered in a webinar version that is pre-recorded and that is completely free. So this is a very, very special session for all of you guys that are listening into it today in your time, whenever today happens to be. So make sure that you jot down all of those questions, including and most importantly, where you're at now and what you want to achieve, so that you can look back at that bit of paper at the end of the presentation and see that you've already achieved that. And if I've done my job well, so much more. Now that you know a little bit more about you, I want to share with you a little bit more about me. Now this is important for two reasons. Not just because I want you to know how I got to where I am today so you can see how you can do a very similar thing, but also because there's lessons in my story. And I want to share those lessons with you so that you can do things correctly the first time around. As a result, I want to start fairly early. Actually, at age 2, because I wrote my first book, believe it or not, at age 2. Now, bear in mind, it was no masterpiece. We all know a 2-year-old child can neither read nor write. But when my Nana told me about her fishing trip, I said to her, "Nana, that's a great story. You should write a book about that." To which my Nana said to me, and I could still remember these words clear as day, she said, "I could never do that." Well, that's all it took. I grabbed a couple of sheets of paper, folded them in half, put a staple through them, picked up a texter and said, "Fine, then I will." "What's it called?" said Nana. "Nana Went Fishing," I answered. That was fairly obvious. It was a story about her fishing trip. She grabbed the book and started to write the title, and I said, "Stop, I want to do it." Took the texter. Now, needless to say, it was a long and tedious experience. And I now know I have one of the most patient Nanas in the world, because it went something like this. "Nana, how do you spell Nana? Nana, what does an N look like?" So as I said, it did take the whole day. It was no masterpiece. 6 pages, 3 words a page, nothing special. But at the end of that day, I had in fact written my first book. Now this proves to me a couple of things. Firstly, that age is irrelevant. Whether you're 2, whether you're 70 odd, if you want to publish a book, you can. But what's also relevant is that age-old expression I'm sure you've all heard before. If you believe you can, you're right. And if you believe you can't, you're also right. I believed at age 2 I could do it. And even though I could neither read nor write in one day, I did in fact write my first book. My nana at 70 odd believed she couldn't do it. And well, she did come to the party, I'll tell you now, 20 years later, when I got a call from her. Hi, I'd like to speak to the publishing queen. Nan, I know it's you. No, I don't want to speak to you. I want to be a paying customer. I would like to publish a book. Can you do it or not? Now, it took her 20 years to come to the party, and she did at age 90 write and publish her first book as a present, actually, to my uncle for his 60th birthday. So it was a really big deal across the whole family. But it took her 20 years to come to the party. In other words, age is irrelevant. 2, 90, I don't care. If you believe you can do it, you can do it. And with the tools I'm going to show you throughout this presentation, you'll then know how. But if you don't believe you can do it, if you don't believe it is possible, well, as they say, you're right. Let's jump forward a little bit. And as you can see, I'm a bit of an early starter in life because I actually opened my first business at age 8. That's right, I'm talking to you today about books and business, and I did both very early on. Now, it wasn't a lemonade stand, as you can see. It was what any 8-year-old can do. I thought, okay, what can I actually do? Well, I like to do craft, so I'm going to go sell craft items at the local market. Didn't have too many skill sets at age 8, wasn't really technically employable by anyone, so this was the first idea that came to mind. Now what actually happened, because I've been pretty independent as you can see early on and always a bit of a go-getter, I said to my mum at age 8, I turned to her, I thanked her for raising me, I said, thank you mum, you've done a brilliant job, but I really feel I'm old enough and independent enough now to go out and start life on my own. So I thanked her for raising me and I turned to leave, and as I left, or tried to leave, she said to me, oh, that's fine, but would you mind doing a test? Now, I've always been very competitive, so I'm like, yeah, sure, what do you want me to do? She said, just prove to me during the next week that you can live in this house independently, you know, cook for yourself, clean for yourself, look after yourself. And if you can prove after the week that you truly are old enough and independent enough to go out and start life on your own, you can go. Loved the challenge. Rushed down to local shops, you know, bought some groceries, came back, had one sister, so I cleared out a quarter of the fridge, marked it off Kylie's shelf and Kylie's areas, put a bit of string, quarter of each room, because I thought living independently was staying away from my family for the whole week. Clearly, I hadn't fully got the picture. I also thought it meant not talking to them, but I had everything done, everything set up perfect, or so I thought. Lived completely independently for the whole week, cooked all my own meals, cleaned up after myself, cleaned my room, washed my clothes, dried my clothes, you name it. And at the end of the week, I went to my mum and I went, how did I go? She said to me, well, look, my mum wasn't the best mum in the world, nor was she the worst mum in the world, but this is the best thing she ever could have done for me. She said, actually, you did brilliantly. You have proved to me that you are clearly old enough and independent to go out and live on your own. So off you go. So I turned to leave for the second time, still not having even packed a bag because that hadn't crossed my mind. She said, but before you go, don't you think you should buy next week's groceries? Well, I freaked. I turned around. But I've spent my life savings on last week's, I said. Well, you got a bit of a problem then, don't you? Now, this was a reality shock that a lot of people generally get a lot later in life, but at age 8, that was all it took. I went to the markets the next day and I started my business. I took these craft items to make, as I said, and I referred to them as magnetic mice, you know, pull a clothes peg apart, put some fluff on there, which is basically, you know, a grassy item that you can find out on the beaches, apple seeds for ears, you know, when I'm picturing these things, you can stick them on the fridge, there's a magnet. I borrowed some of my dad's tools because I wanted clamps. I thought, if this is going to work, I need a marketing angle. I'm 8 years old. I make these things live. This is a good marketing angle. So I borrowed some of my dad's clamps, took some stock with me. The idea was I was going to make up a bunch. People would watch me making it, and I'd sell it an hour later after it dried. Well, the marketing angle worked too well. And what I mean by this is people were literally throwing gold coins at me, because I said it was a gold coin to purchase, and ripping these mice out of my clamps, because of course the original stock went very quickly when they could see me making it. They were pulling out these things before they were dry. Now, I was furious because I knew they were taking away a faulty product, a product that did not work because it hadn't dried and it was going to fall apart. I was furious. This is not the point of the story. Doesn't matter how I felt. Matters how they felt. Note what these people were doing. They were literally throwing money at me for a product that was not yet complete due to a good marketing angle. Now that's what I'm sharing with you guys today. People are literally going to give you money for something you haven't done yet due to the correct marketing angles, and that's what we're going to be talking about throughout the rest of the presentation. In other words, we're going to talk about pre-selling your book so you get the money now, before you even put pen to paper, so you get paid to do your market research. Pretty cool stuff. Let's move along though. Let's jump forward a little bit to my first real career. Gone to uni, got the qualification, so I opened a graphic design studio. And I basically put as much thought into that as I had my first business, though I had run a series of businesses in between. But I went, I'm qualified as a graphic designer, so I'm going to open a graphic design studio. And then, of course, I had no customers. So what I did on day 2 of my graphic design business was I started networking. Now, you've already got the impression I'm a bit of a go-getter. So when I say networking, I mean heads down, bums up, let's do this properly. In other words, I was out for breakfast, lunch and dinner every day of the week at various networking events. I was meeting with people one-on-one for morning tea and afternoon tea to get to develop the relationship stronger and really build strong relationships with people. And of course, I was at a personal development or business development seminar every weekend. So you could say I had no life, though I thought I was living it up. This was amazing. I was learning things so quickly. I was growing personally so quickly. And as a result, my business was growing so quickly. And this is what I want to share with you. Because what accidentally happened was I got thrown into publishing. That's right, actually, at my very, very first networking event, day 2 of my business, while I'm still signing up, I haven't even paid to attend the event. This lady comes charging across the room. She runs up to me and she says, "Can you publish my book?" And I sit there and I go, "Well, I'm a graphic designer, so I could design the book. I can build websites so we can sell it online. She's probably going to want it printed. I suppose I could become a print broker. That can't be too hard. Oh, that legal stuff, the barcode, the ISBN, I'm going to have to work that out." Sure, I said, "We can publish your book." Now, to date, we have never published this lady's book. And do you want to know why? She still hasn't finished writing it. As I said, you can be your own worst enemy. But what this lady did is she put an idea in my head, because within about a space of about 2.5 years, we'd gone from what I thought was going to be a graphic design studio to 95% of our work in publishing and about 5% still doing the fiddly old business cards, which, trust me, I was well and truly over by this stage. In other words, I was attracting the kind of clients that I wanted to work with and naturally falling into the area that I was learning more and more about at a rapid rate, just as it was picking up in the early stages. Back when people were saying, "What's this self-publishing stuff?" I was there. I was on the ball early on. I learnt on the job everything I needed to know from my customers live. Whenever they asked me a question, I went and found a solution for it so I can share it with you guys today. So you are in a brilliant space because you're getting this information after we've already seen the results of everything that's changed over the last decade or so. So what I did was I looked at my customers because I realized it was time for a change. 95% of the work in publishing, really over business cards, we need to have a change. So I looked at all the customers I'd had to date, all the books we'd published, and they all fitted within 2 categories. They were the people that I refer to as poets of some sort, in other words, poetry, prose, something like that, they'd written a book. Or they were people I refer to as coaches of some sort. These were the ones that were educating people on someone, so the ones that generally had a business behind it and wanted to be profiled as the expert in their field. There was no one else. There was no grey. It was black or white, one or the other. So I had a look at these guys, and basically there was a huge difference between them. The poets, they were filling their garages with boxes and boxes of unopened books that they could not sell and wondering why. And the coaches, they were bringing in a 6-figure income from book sales alone. And there was no grey, as I said. So I had a look at these guys. I looked at what the poets were doing, or what I should say were not doing, because of course you don't move any books if you don't do anything. Bonus tip for you there. And I looked at what the coaches were doing and how quickly and easily they were moving their books. And what I did is I developed simple systems. Basically included everything the coaches did and nothing the poets did. Or everything the poets did as a not to. Let's put it that way. Now these simple systems, they take you from A to B. In other words, what you were thinking about before. A is where you are now. B is where you want to be. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about systems. If this happens, then you do this, else you do this. There's long, detailed system manuals. They can be hundreds and hundreds of pages thick. I'm not talking about that crap that no one has time to read. I'm talking about simple systems. What's your A? What's your B? What's the most direct route to get between the two of them? And what's the least number of steps we need to do along the process? That's what I'm talking about when I say simple systems, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Before I do that, though, I do need to mention that I am talking about self-publishing. I did briefly mention that before, but I need to tell you that I am not talking about traditional publishing. Now, for those of you that don't know the difference, and bear in mind, I'm a little bit biased here because I do love self-publishing and I hate traditional publishing, but here's the differences between the two. What I don't like about traditional publishing is you basically pitch your book to a traditional publisher and it's either accepted or rejected. Well, 99% of the time it's rejected, and not necessarily because it was a bad book, just because, they got too many manuscripts that day. You resubmit it, it's rejected again and again and again. And to be perfectly honest with you, too many dreams are squashed. Brilliant books, like for example, I think Possum Magic, it wasn't accepted till the 37th time. So all this rejection and brilliant books can be lost. And then there's books that aren't so brilliant that are getting out there, and I'm sure you've all seen them in the bookstores. So the first thing I don't like traditional publishing is the rejection. You want to self-publish? Consider your book published. There is no rejection. The flip side of that, you better make sure your book's high quality, because if no one else is going to get rid of it and you don't keep to the standard of the marketplace, well, that's going to heavily affect your sales. Let's just put it that way. But once you get past that hurdle, if you are one of the books that's actually accepted, the way traditional publishing works is that they basically take complete control of your book, your life, and the whole process. What I mean by that is they tell you how everything's going to look, what the design of your book is, how the book's being edited. You don't have the final say anymore. Pardon my French, but they bastardize your product to take what you had to turn into what they want. In return for this, they take control of your life, tell you, the media's going to interview this day, and that day, where and when. This is actually what your publicist does, and I do say take control of your life, though I must admit they're doing next to nothing these days, which makes it even worse, because it's great to have 50 media interviews in 1 week and all the exposure that comes from that, but it's a bit rough when you have to check with your publicist before you can commit to a family commitment, for example. But as I said, they're not actually doing that much these days anyway, and if you're doing your own promotion, well, you may as well self-publish. But of course, in return for that, you do get a nice royalty check in the mail each month. Now, self-publishing is the exact opposite. You keep complete control of the process, therefore you say what your book's going to look like, how it's going to be edited, absolutely everything like that. Of course, we still want media intention and the like, and I'm going to talk to you about how to get that today, because you need to have that work-life balance right. But you're in control. You say what your book looks like, you say what the marketing process is going to be, and of course, he who puts in the financial investment, because that's the only advantage of traditional publishing, let's face it, they pay it all for you. Whoever puts in the financial investment reaps the rewards. So with traditional publishing, that royalty check, you're only left with $1 or $2 per copy sold. Now don't get me wrong, they move 1 million copies, that's $1 or $2 million. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad money. But with self-publishing, you keep all the profits, all the hard labours for your work. So generally the average book will get you about 10 times that. So I'm not saying that you don't still need to move volumes, of course you do. But you could move 100,000 and get the same kind of returns as needing to move 1 million in the traditional process. In other words, less books, more profit. So that's the pros and cons of each. Don't get me wrong, there is a time and a place for it. I did have a customer come to me recently and say, look, I've been picked up by a traditional publisher. What should I do? I said, well, this isn't a bad problem. This is a good thing. And he goes, no, but you've told me how horrible they are. And that wasn't what I was saying. I was just saying I liked the way self-publishing works because of all the reasons I've already mentioned. And I said, look, this is an opportunity that doesn't come up all the time. You go in the front door, you're rejected time and time again. You go in the back door, you've got a little bit more control because now the ball's in your court and you can tell them the terms and conditions. So I did encourage him to go ahead with it. I said, if you don't like it, you can always come back. Well, a couple of months later, needless to say, a copy of his book arrived on my desk with a post-it stuck on the front. It said, you were right. They halved the size of my book, reduced the quality, and I now get 1/10 of the price per copy sold. So needless to say, how he'll be publishing his next book, but I just want to make that distinction clear to you. Before I go on though, I just want to briefly share with you my book goals. And the reason for this is I want to tell you what they were and how quickly and easily I achieved them, so you know whatever you wrote down on that bit of paper, how quickly and easily you're actually going to be able to start achieving that today. Well, I set myself 2 book goals. The first was I wanted to write my first book I planned to publish, note, not the one I did when I was 2, before I turned 25. And secondly, with a week to go, I wanted to prove that a book following my sisters could in fact be written in less than a week. Well, simply put, a week later, with my book at print, I'll come to how I did that in a moment, I decided to run my first event. Because simply put, I was a hypocrite. I was watching people's lives being turned around. I was watching these people bring in these 6-figure incomes from book sales alone and the impact it made on their book, their business, themselves, their lives. But I wasn't like that. I was turning up to the office at 9 o'clock at night and working through to 5 o'clock in the morning, or sometimes 5 o'clock in the afternoon, working through to 9 o'clock in the morning. I was doing the wrong hours, 9 to 5 the wrong way around, if you hear what I'm saying. My staff would arrive when I leave and I would arrive when they were leaving. It was no life. I had it all wrong. And so I did what I was teaching my customers to do. I profiled myself as the expert in my field. I did that by running my first event. Now note my book has gone to print. A week has passed. It's not back yet. It doesn't exist. I'm going to say this first event was successful. And what I mean by that is we're expecting 40 people to turn up on the night and we actually had 80. Of those 80 people, 96%, in other words, all bar one, pre-ordered a book that night. Now, I'm deeming this as successful and as a big deal for a couple of reasons. First of all, 96%, everyone bar one, pre-ordered a book at an event that, one, they did not know who was running, because I didn't announce I was the publishing queen till that night, that they did not know what it was about, that they did not know would be sold to them at the end, that did not exist. 80 people, 79 sales, one night. This is the kind of thing I'm going to be sharing with you today on how you can do the very same thing. And this was only a week after I wrote the book. So this is literally credibility overnight from becoming a published author. That's what I'm going to show you how to achieve today. But what I want to be clear on is publishing a book is the tool and not the result. As you can see, there's a lot more going on in the picture behind what I'm talking about here than just literally publishing the book itself. And that's what I'm going to share with you. It's important to note, though, as I said, that we are talking about self-publishing, and I'm not trying to go on about it, but this time I do want to put self in inverted commas. I think you guys all know which film this image is from, and it's, do you want the red pill or do you want the blue pill? Here's the thing. Ignorance is bliss. You don't know what I'm about to tell you, but once you know, I can't take it back. Once you choose to go down this rabbit hole with me, once you choose to take this journey, I can't unprint a book you've printed and released to the world. You can't change your mind and then take back these words. You can't create all this credibility for yourself and then want to walk down the street in, your shorts and singlet and no makeup on, looking a bit of a dad because you didn't brush your hair. You need to make this decision. If you make this decision to come with me on the self-publishing journey, you need to know there's no turning back. So I'm not going to be able to hear your answer, but I am going to ask you now. Are you ready to move forward with your self-publishing now? Or should you be maybe stopping this recording and going away? Not trying to be mean, not trying to be cruel, but it's a real journey. It is an amazing journey. It will transform your life. But if you're not ready for it, there is no turning back and you can't change your mind. So decide which pill you want to take and then move forward with me. And if you choose to move forward, I have one question for you. And that's, which side of the fence are you on? Did you know 50% of people who set out to self-publish for whatever reason don't achieve that reason at the end of the process? Now, I thought this was absolutely disgusting. So I surveyed my own customers. And I got the exact same result. Now, I was furious. I knew not only had these customers had books that were published to a high quality standard because I'd published them, but at this stage, I'd also educated them all. So I knew they had the best up-to-date education possible. So if they had a high quality book and the correct education, why did 50% of them not achieve what they set out to at the start of the process? Once again, there was no grey. It was black or white, 50% on one side, 50% on the other. And do you know the only difference between the two? The 50% who did basically jack all, well, that's the results they got. If you don't do anything, you don't get any results. The 50% who applied what I taught, well, they were the ones bringing in the six-figure income from book sales alone. It was just like the poets and coaches. There was no difference. So my question for you is, which side of the fence are you on? Are you the kind of person that's going to go away after listening to this webinar? Maybe say, that was an amazing webinar. Maybe even recommend me to your friends, but do nothing with it? Or are you the kind of person who's going to take action straight away? Now, as I said, I can't see your answer, but if you didn't just scream out, take action straight away, you need to seriously think about why you're watching this video, because the rest of the information might be good information. You might go, there's some great tips in there, but if you don't do anything with it, it's not going to work for you. So just think about it. Which side of the fence are you on? Well, I'm glad you made the decision to continue the journey with me. So I'm going to show you what we're going to be going through today. We've got an awful lot to cover. And that includes amazing answers to self-distribution, how to market your book at no cost to you. It includes high-level strategies for marketing your book online, even if you're a technophobe, meaning they're easy. It includes crowd marketing, marketing your book effectively offline. It also includes sensational secrets of online distribution, how to sell your book without doing anything. This one's usually pretty popular. It includes passive marketing, one-to-many marketing, and affiliate marketing, discovering how online marketing can work for you. And smart marketing, how to implement active marketing strategies. We're also going to go through timeless techniques for bookstore distribution, how to find your ideal client without looking for them, global marketing, an infinite amount of free media exposure, and breaking bookstore barriers to boost your sales strategically. So as you can see, we've got a lot to get through, but before I get into this core content, there is a few other things I want to share with you first. That's for a range of reasons, mostly because they're foundational, and this content won't be as valuable to you if you haven't done the foundational steps first. So let's have a look at the first one. The first one is, I want to be very clear with you what Cashflow Positive means. And that means sell before you print. So you can sell before you write, you can sell before you design, you can sell before you print. So long as you haven't actually produced an item or paid someone to produce an item, your process will run Cashflow Positive. And that, of course, that's what makes self-publishing easy, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Throughout this presentation, you'll hear me mention several E's. The easiest, most efficient, most economical, and most effective ways of doing anything. These are my 4 E's. I love them. I live by them. I build them into everything I do. If it's not easy, if it's not efficient, if it's not economical, if it's not effective, and in reverse order, it has to be effective before it can be economical, before it can be efficient, and before it can be easy, I'm not interested. In other words, those simple systems, the A to B, those straight lines are really straight and really simple because there's hard ways to do things. There's slow ways to do things. There's expensive ways to do things. And of course, there's ways to do things that don't get you the results you want. But I'm not interested in any of them. Easy, efficient, economical, and effective, you won't hear anything else from me. Moving on though, here's the thing that normally gets in people's way at around this point in time. You have, either conscious or subconscious, some excuses or fears that are going to get in the way of your success. What I want to do is help you dismiss them right now. So let's have a look at the first one. Time. I get this one all the time. Couldn't possibly self-publish, Kylee, because it would take too long. If this is honestly a concern for you, I want you to pause now and think about that. I'm not going to hear your answer. But if this is honestly a concern for you, let me dismiss it straight away. I'm going to show you shortly how to write your book in less than 7 days. And I'm going to show you how to market that book immediately before it's even written in 5 minutes a day. Now, if you honestly don't have a week to set aside to write your book, and by the way, it's less than 7 days, and I can show you how to fit this time into your current available time around your current lifestyle. And if you don't seriously have 5 minutes a day, then I encourage you now to stop listening to this recording and just give up, basically. Because if you honestly can't commit 5 minutes a day to marketing your book, I'll tell you right now, it's not going to be successful. So why waste your time writing it and designing it and publishing it and wasting money if you're paying someone else to do any of these things if you don't plan on committing the time to marketing it? If you think of your book kind of like having a baby, everyone's familiar with the gestation period. We call this publishing. Everyone's familiar with the birth. We call this the book launch. But that's a baby. It's not even an infant or a toddler. It can't look after itself, and you're setting it free in the world and hoping it'll be okay. Look, a human child's 24/7. We're not talking about that. We're talking about 5 minutes a day. But if you aren't willing to commit 5 minutes a day for the next 20 odd years to that child, don't think it's going to raise itself. And if you're thinking serious, and by the way, you should all be thinking serious because there's more money behind a series, then you're thinking of having multiple children, don't forget to get the first one underway, at least to the toddler stage, before you bring out the next book, because if you've got a couple of babies on your hand, you've got a bit of a problem, if you know what I'm saying. So time, 5 minutes a day, but you need to be willing to commit it. Money. Here's another one I get all the time. It costs too much. Well, the reason people think this is because it's true. The traditional book, if you paid someone to do all 7 stages of the publishing process for you, which I'll share with you in a moment what they are, it would cost you around $20,000. Now, no, that was not a mistake. That is the actual figure. There is ways of finding out what the correct figure is or the exact figure is for your books based on the specifics of it, but they all average out to be around $20,000. Now, here's the thing. If you had a spare $20,000, for example, and you wanted me to publish your book for you, I would encourage you not to give me the money because it's a waste of money that you don't need to pay. If you don't have a spare $20,000, and let's face it, most of us don't have that in our back pocket, then once again, I'm going to encourage you to do the same thing. Don't spend money you don't need to. In other words, I'm going to show you how to halve that cost by doing as many of the 7 stages of the publishing process as you can yourself. Halve it again by doing each of them in those 4 E's, the easiest, most efficient, most economical, and most effective ways possible, and fund that remainder with someone else's money. Meaning we're talking pre-sale, we're talking print on demand, so you're always paid before you print. All these techniques, catchphrases you would have heard everywhere, they're quite common these days. I'm going to show you how to use all of these so you don't pay a cent to get your book published, but you actually fund the production costs of your book through marketing the book itself. And we're actually about to cover it very shortly. But first, there's 2 more things that might stand in your way. The first is confidence. I could never do that. This is something like, well, basically what people mean when they say this is, I don't believe in myself, I don't believe in my book, or I don't believe in my content. Now, if you don't believe in yourself, why the hell are you publishing a book to profile you as the expert in your field? If you don't believe in your book, why are you bringing it out? And if you don't believe in your content, why are you writing it in the first place? This question is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't think you can do it, as I said before, you can't. You're right. If you think you can, you're also right. So confidence is one I can't help you with today, unfortunately. If you honestly don't think you can do this, stop now. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your money. If you honestly think you can, let's get going, because this is an amazing journey and I'm here to make you extremely successful efficiently. One of my E's. Here's the last one, comparison. Wouldn't it just be easier to, I don't know, traditional publish? Or wouldn't it just be easier to pay someone else to do it all for me? Or wouldn't it be, doesn't matter what you're going to fill that in with. If you think anything else would be easier, if you're comparing what you're about to do, launching into the self-publishing journey with absolutely anything else, I tell you right now, you're not going to get the outcome you want. You need to be certain you want to do this now. You need to be certain that you want to self-publish, and you need to be ready to start now and never stop. I describe that kind of person kind of like an upside down traffic light. And what I mean by that is it's upside down, the green's first, ready to go now. The yellow, you must be radiating a bright light and extremely passionate about your book. That comes into the confidence. If you're not extremely passionate about your book, that's going to come through in your sales and marketing. That's going to affect the sales. So it's really important that you love your book and that everyone can see how much you love and believe in your book. And the red's at the bottom because you never want to stop. As I said, 5 minutes a day, think of it for over 20 years like raising a child. You've got to be ready to go now, extremely passionate and never wanting to stop. If that's you, then there is no comparison. So you're in the right place. Not going to take you much time, not going to cost you any money. You can do it if you believe you can, and there's no other way to do it than following what I'm about to share with you right now. If we're on the same page, join with me and let me show you how easy it can truly be. I want to share with you a secret. Told you this was coming momentarily. I'm going to show you how to plan your book. What I want you to do is get a piece of paper in front of you. So if you had that bit of paper you wrote things down on before, flip it over. You're going to need a fresh sheet. At the top of that bit of paper, I want you to write the subject of your book. However briefly you can explain it, 1, 2, 3 words, really, really short subject of your book. Underline that, that's the heading. Then I want you to think like you're having a conversation with someone about your book. So I want you to pause and think, what would you say to that person? It's about the subject area of your book, so don't think about the book itself, think about the topic. What would you say to that person if they'd never heard anything about this topic before? What if you were never ever going to see them again? This is the last conversation you ever had with them. What would you need to tell them? What would you need to tell them to fill all the gaps in between? Think of this exercise kind of like a brain dump. I want you to pause the recording momentarily, and I want you to write down absolutely everything that comes to mind. And when you think that list is complete, and we'll soon find out whether it is or not, when you think that list is complete, then I want you to resume the recording and I'll tell you what to do with it. So pause the recording now and I'll see you momentarily. Okay, so I'm guessing you all have your list in front of you. If not, pause the recording and then come back to it and you think your list is complete. If you think your list is complete, we're going to have a look at it and see if it actually is. So thinking once again, not about the book, about this being a conversation with someone. With all those items you've got down there and probably in dot point form, I want you to have a look at it. Where would you naturally start the conversation? Whatever that is, I want you to put a 1 next to it. Then I want you to look through the whole list again and see where you'd end the conversation. Remember, if this is the last time you ever speak to this person, what's the most important thing you need to leave them with? Put an L next to that for last. And then I want you to look at the list and I want you to work through it in order. In other words, from step 1, so this is our A and B, we're filling in the gap between them. From step 1, where would I naturally go? Whatever naturally flows next, I want you to put a 2 next to it. From that, whatever naturally throws next, I want you to put a 3 next to it. Sounds fairly basic, and this part of the exercise is. But you'll find when you're doing this, one of 3 things will happen. Either you'll get to the end quickly and easily, and absolutely every point's been used up. This is the most uncommon, but it can happen to some people. You'll get to the end, but there'll be things you haven't used. If you haven't used them, they're not relevant for this book. They may be a tangent or relevant for a different book, so I want you to cross them out. Or, most commonly, you'll pause part way because there's not a logical jump or a flow. This often means you've forgotten to write something down. So whatever is the logical gap between the point you have and the point you want to get to, write that down, give it the next number, and keep going until you get to the end. Once again, I encourage you to pause the recording now and do this part of the exercise. So if you're listening to me now, I'm assuming you've resumed the recording, you've got that list and it's now numbered in order. Have a look at it, read it out. How's the flow? If you've done the exercise correctly, you now have the perfect flow for all the content of your book, meaning you don't just have the subject, you don't just have where you're starting and ending the book, but you have the logical flow from beginning to end, and your list is complete and your list is perfect. Do you know what you also have? You have your table of contents. Now it's going to be really simple to write the book. You already know what it's about, you already know what you're writing about in what area, so all it is a matter of is sitting down, finding some quiet space to write uninterrupted, starting and not stopping. You've heard me talk about that before in the traffic light illustration. And just writing out that whole chapter until you get to the end. If you can do this, and yes, it does take some self-discipline, you'll be surprised how quickly you can churn your book out. But that's a really brief overview of my second secret, which is how to write your book in less than 7 days, the 7-day secret. That's a really brief overview because I actually ran a full day course on this alone. Obviously, I'm not going to have the time to put that into this webinar. But what I do have for you is a bonus. If you can write down that web address and go to it, you can download a complimentary copy of my ebook, How to Write a Book in Less Than 7 Days. Now, this is brilliant because, as I said, it's normally a full day course, but anyone who has ever read this book, not purchased it, this book is for sale on my website. Don't go there, go to this link and you can download it complimentary. Anyone who has ever read this book, not purchased it, not been given it as a gift and put it on the shelf, not downloaded, not done anything with it, anyone who has ever read it, and not just read it to the end and go, that's a great read, but read it and applied what it said, you get where I'm going with this, has in fact written their book in less than 7 days. I've had stories from people I haven't even met who got the book as a Christmas present and by the new year their book was written out there. How they started from nothing and built a business around this book and are now bringing in a lot more than a 6-figure income per annum and have created amazing credibility for themselves at ridiculously young ages purely due to reading this book alone. This book changes lives. I'm giving it to you complimentary. In other words, free. It's costing you nothing. It has the ability to change your life, but so do you. It's up to you whether you read it or not, but you obviously know what I'm encouraging you to do. It has the ability to do it. It won't do it unless you step in. So let's move on. Who wants to know the 3-step publishing plan? This is generally fairly popular because basically, let's face it, we all want to know the easiest way of doing anything. The reason there's 3 steps is, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I honestly don't think people can remember any more than 3 steps at a time. So this is the 3-step publishing plan, and I'll break down each of the steps a bit further for you so you have a little bit more detail. Step 1 is deciding the author and subject. Well, I already alluded to that a little bit before. You know the subject, it's whatever you wrote on the top of that bit of paper. But you also know the author. It's whatever you decide your name was at the start. As I said, it could be your literal name. It could be a credibility name like the publishing queen like I use. But whatever it is, you already know those 2 things now. So guess what? You've already done step 1. We're only probably less than an hour into today's presentation and you've already got step 1 done. So congratulations, you've only got 2/3 of the work left to do. Let's have a look at step 2. Well, this is this A to B stuff I was talking about. Determining how to get from A to B. Now there's 3 sub-steps to this. Of course, you need to learn what to do. We'll consider that done today. You're here learning right now. You need to plan what to do. Well, I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. And of course, you need to put a budget to that plan. Now, a budget is 2 things. It's both price, meaning anything you can't do yourself. You want to get an obligation-free quote from someone to do it for you. But it's also time, because don't just budget money. You need to know not only what steps you're doing in what order to get from A to B, not only how much they cost you for anything that's not free, so you know how much you've got to pre-sell for, but how long each is going to take so you know when your book will be releasing and so you have a timeline to work to keep you accountable. So this is really, really important. But let's look at what's involved. What steps are there along this straight line to get you from A to B? Well, basically, there's 7 stages of the publishing process, as I said. Here they are. The first is writing. Second is editing. Third is illustration. Fourth is design. Fifth is registration. Sixth is production. And 7th is distribution. Now, what you would do is you would write these headings on a bit of paper. Won't get you to do it now, but I'm giving you an illustration of how easy this is. Underneath each heading, you'd put what you need to do in that stage. So for writing, you've already done it. It's your table of contents. Put it in there, and step 1's already written. For editing, it'll look something like this. Edit the book yourself, because it's important that you do everything yourself before you pass it on to a professional, before you pay any money. So yes, that's step 2, pass it on to a professional editor. But step 3 is check what they've done, because even though it's essential to have someone else edit your book, because yes, you are too close to your project and you need another set of eyes involved, it's also essential to check what they've done. It doesn't matter how good a professional they are. It doesn't matter how perfect you think they may be. They are only human and could have made a mistake. But aside from that, even if everything is grammatically correct, they might have changed something to make it grammatically correct when you intentionally wanted incorrect to prove a point. You know your book's subject matter better than them, so always check what they've done. Editing has 2 stages though, so put a line down the middle of the page in that section. On the other side, I want you to write about proofreading. In other words, proof the book yourself, get a professional proofreader, and yes, you're right, check what they've done. These are the 2 steps. Editing traditionally is done after writing, but proofreading, I want you to do that after the design is completed, before your book goes to print as that final proof. Next is illustration. Now, every book has illustrations. Yours may not be traditional hand-drawn illustrations, but whatever they are, they still need to be created in the illustration stage, even if it's just stock photographs you're sourcing. But what you want here, similar thing. You want to source the images, whether that may draw a rough sketch you want someone to create or go find the photographs you want to be used. You want to get a professional on board. So if it's a professional illustrator or photographer taking or creating these images for you, If it's not, if it's you, here's some way you're saving money, but you need to do the step. In other words, if you've got a sketch, you need to create the illustration. If you've got a rough image, you need to go find the high-res stock photo. And step 3 is, of course, check what they've done. And even if you're checking yourself, make sure you do check it. Don't plan something, do it, and not check it's right before you hand it on to the next stage. That's just asking for disaster. Difference with illustration, though, particularly if someone's doing it for you, is you should really put a ×3 after it. What I mean by that is if you check what they've done and you don't like anything, for example, you need to send the photo back for editing because you want the eyes brighter, or you need to send the illustration back because the dress should have been green, not pink. Whatever it is, you send it back to them. That is your new briefing, stage 1, your new sourcing what you want done. They then do it. That is the new getting the professional to do it. And of course, once again, you check what they've done. I usually say ×3 because the most easy, efficient, economical, and effective way of doing this is in 3 stages. The first stage, you tell them what you want initially, and you get, hopefully, that. But you don't, because you get their understanding of what was in your head. Second stage, you rip that first draft apart. You be brutal. You tell them absolutely everything you don't like and why. That creates a second draft that is near perfect, where then all you need to give them is the minor changes, which creates a third draft that is complete. This is how you get it done in 3 steps. Design, we'll put a line down the middle there too, because we all know there's 2 halves to design. There's your cover, what goes on the outside of your book, and there's the contents, what goes on the inside of your book. Now the cover needs to be graphic designed, the contents needs to be typeset. Doesn't matter what you're doing, same steps. You need to give someone a brief, tell them what you want. In other words, pictures of covers or contents you like, tell them why. A description of what you want. I want white space in my book. I want the page numbers to be here. I want the front cover to have a red thing. I want whatever you want. Tell them. Step 2, get the professional to do it. Step 3, check what they've done. And once again, put a ×3 there because you've got the same 3 rounds of changes. That moves you to registration, and I can't tell you what to put under there yet because it's going to be reflected by production. Whatever you're producing, divide your page into that number. So for example, if you want to print a book and an ebook, divide your page in half. Put the specs of what you want. You don't need to know the actual specs. For example, you don't need to know the thickness of the stock or the name of the stock or anything like that, but you need to know if you want a book with colour contents or black and white. You need to know if you want the outside gloss or matte. You want to know if you want the inside gloss or matte. Common things like this. What kind of binding do you want? What size is the book? Put those specs into production, and whatever you've got in production, put those same headings in registration because you need to register every format of your book. I mean, you need an ISBN, International Standard Barcode number, for each format your book's published in. So if you want to go with the standards at the moment, that's your printed book, these days print on demand, and that's your EPUB. That's your ebook these days. That's the way they expect it to be downloaded and supplied to e-reading devices. So that's what I put in your registration and your production. Distribution, you've got 3 options. Anything you do yourself is referred to as self-distribution. Anything you do online, in other words, a dedicated web store there designed to selling book, is referred to as online. And of course there's bookstore distribution, which is all your traditional bookstores, but also your online stores. Amazon, for example, fits within that. So anything that's a bookstore is bookstore distribution. Your online dedicated space that you've set up yourself, which is basically your money-making porthole, that's your online, and everything else is self-distribution because you're doing it yourself. That's basically a very brief overview of your publishing plan, but don't forget to put a budget to anything in that you can't do yourself, and also put a time budget to all of it. There's your A and B in a bit more detail, but that's absolutely everything you'll need to know. But what's step 3? If you know what your book's about and who's writing it, if you've got your A to B planned out, I've just shown you how, so you've learnt it, I've just shown you how to create your plan, and you can put a budget to it afterwards. What's step 3? Really simple. Work through each step in order. Can't stress that enough. That is all you need to do to ensure your book is successfully published. But here's the thing. Do you want a successfully published book? When I ask this question, most people answer yes. And let's face it, why wouldn't they? Because who wants an unsuccessfully published book? But the answer is really no. Because all those people that filled their garages with boxes and boxes of unopened books, were their books successfully published? Yes, they were. They just did nothing with them afterwards. So what you actually want is a successfully marketed book. In other words, what you really want to know is the 3-step marketing plan. So I'm going to share that with you really briefly right now. Step 1, sell now. No other way of saying it. If you think you better write your book first or design your book first or publish your book first, you are wasting time and you are losing money. The best way to successfully self-publish in a cash flow manner, putting none of your own money down, is to sell now. can't stress it enough. You must do this. In other words, as soon as you finish listening to this recording, I want you to be going out and start selling your book. I'll tell you how to do it in a moment. But if you don't start straight away, if you're not that upside down traffic light, you're not going to get the results you want. Step 2. Well, remember this publishing plan? I'm going to change it a bit for you. Take the last step and move it to the start. I'll do this again because it's so simple. Take the last step and move it to the start. That's right. I want you to distribute your book in bookstores, online, and yourself before it is even written. Because that makes Cashflow positive. That's selling before you print. That's what makes self-publishing easy. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. If you're not able to promote your book now, if you're not able to distribute and market your book before it even exists, don't waste time or money producing it, because if you're not able to do it now, you're hardly going to be able to do it later. Really important to start straight away. So step 2 is, of course, determine the marketing methods. I already told you there was self-distribution, online distribution, and bookstore distribution, but what are you doing with them? If this is how you need to publish your book, if this is how you need to distribute your book, if this is what you're going to do to marketing your book, if this is now step 1, you need to know a bit more detail about each of them because you need to know what to do in step 1. That I'm going to share with you momentarily. But once you've got that detail in your plan, step 3 is exactly the same. Work through each step in order. It really is that simple. Now I'm just going to pause for a moment because I want to give you one more example before we go on any further. And that's this. Practice makes perfect. Now if this was a live event, I'd say take a short 15-minute morning tea break, because I want you to use this time to practice pre-selling your book and talk to other attendees about your book and find out about theirs. Now I can't say that to you because this is not a live event. You probably don't have anyone else there with you, and I'm not going to be able to hear what you say. But I still want you to do the exercise because the exercise is invaluable. What I mean by that is I'm asking you to pre-sell your book before I've taught you how to do it. This is very, very important. So what I'm actually going to do, because this would be a morning tea break, I'm actually going to pause the recording here. And I'm going to give you the second half of this webinar in a separate recording so that you can start at another time. So you don't have to remember to hit pause and accidentally go on with the content. I'm going to put a permanent break here. What I want you to do, though, is find someone else in your house that you can practice pre-selling your book to. If no one's there at the moment, get on the phone and call someone. I know you're in the middle of a training session, but this is part of the training. Get on the phone, call someone, chat to them for 5 minutes about your book. Then once you've done that, either in person or on the phone, then I want you to play the second half of this recording, because that's when we're going to get into the heavy duty stuff, those 9 areas I promised you early on. But we need to do these foundations first, as I said, and this is the last foundation. I need you to see what you naturally know before I take what you're doing to the next level. So if you can, as I said, pause the recording now. You won't have to because it's about to run out. And I look forward to seeing you in the second half to have a look at how you went. Good luck.